who are not just sitting in the boardrooms or or in the closed cabins, but they do walk around to see the workplace where the work is really happening. And I know that in a given in a manufacturing unit like a Toyota where a car gets manufactured, you can really visualize where to walk, which place to go to, and what work to observe, because most of the things are predefined. So it becomes little challenging, I would say, when it comes to software world. We'll get to that. We'll get to that, like what are the challenges and what are the challenges that how are we going to tackle those challenges. So what is Gemba Walk really? It is a practice of observation and collaboration at the workplace. So the key words are highlighted here. It is an observation act. It's really important to observe there, and it is also an opportunity to improve the collaboration between the management and the people who are doing the work. And it's an Gemba Walk is a practice where leaders go to the work area to get the first-hand knowledge on how the product is being built, what are the real challenges that are there out there, right? So some of the challenges that come to the management level are sometimes pressing challenges. Until and unless the challenge becomes a really pressing challenge, it doesn't come to the attention of the senior management most of the times, because the teams or the immediate manager will try and resolve it themselves most of the times. However, if a leader does a Gemba walk and then goes and talks to people who are doing the work and then observes them closely when they're doing their job and finds out the real challenges, he can really figure out what are the challenges that are going to come up sooner or later. And he can also look for an opportunity to improvement. Maybe there are room for improvement. Maybe people are struggling with a couple of processes, but they, without complaining, they're just dragging their feet along with those challenges. So there could be areas of improvement as well, which the leader can identify. So that is Gemba Walk. However, I would want to bring a very clear distinction here. There is another management concept called management by walking around. This is also pretty famous management practice, wherein managers take random walks. Senior management, they take random walks around the office, around the work area, meeting random people, talking to them, trying to draw them into a conversation, or go have lunch with the colleagues, with all different team members, try and engage them in a conversation, try and figure out what is it that they're going through, what is it that they're finding difficulty in. So that's also a pretty popular concept. If you Google up for management by walking around, you will find a good amount of literature around it and good amount of praises around it. So in this webinar, I really want to clearly bring out the distinction between a Gemba walk and the concept called management by walking around, because most of the times it's very easy to confuse both of them to be same. So the distinction that I want to bring out are: management by walking around is unstructured and undefined. So there is really no structure to it. When I say structure, there is no plan behind it. In Gemba walk, it's a very specific plan behind Gemba walk, and a very specific place is chosen to observe a defined activity. Let's assume, for example, let's assume the Toyota manufacturing unit, and now let's say a senior management person decides to do a Gemba walk, and he would also pick and choose a particular tire fitting room, room where tire gets fitted to a particular vehicle. So he decides the time, he decides the place, and also the manager would also try and do some homework before going to the Gemba. Gemba means the place where the work really happens. Now, what kind of homework does the manager do? Does the senior manager do? So the homework is, when I'm going there, what all challenges can occur, can arise, I may notice. What if I notice these challenges? How am I going to tackle it? What are the cross-functional team that I'm going to be inviting to be part of the Gemba walk? So the manager might invite the tire suppliers, the chassis suppliers, the tool suppliers, everybody to come and join him along with for the Gemba Walk. So it's actually a very defined activity, that is going to be observed, and there will be a specific duration also to do the observation. So in management of walking around, you don't really do much of a homework. You just walk around talking to people. Something might come up which might interest you, and then you pursue it. So that's the idea behind management by walking around. However, in the leaders who are practicing management by walking around might throw solutions during their walk. I have seen many senior management people in the organizations that I've worked before, who would come across, come to you holding a cup of tea in their hand, and then just start a conversation with you, or maybe some email that you have shot earlier in the day might have caught their attention, so they just come and drag you into a conversation, hoping to find some context of your working and the challenges that you are facing, and possibly drag the people sitting in the next cube or sitting next to you also into the conversation, hoping that they will get a bigger picture of how things are being run in the organization. And in doing so, the leader who is doing management by walking around would throw some solutions at us. He would probably say, you know what, maybe you want to consider this design, or maybe you want to talk to the person who owns that module X, who's sitting maybe 2 blocks away, or you might want to shoot an email to the person sitting in London who owns that module, etc. So these are the solutions that the leaders throw. They sometimes are useful, but sometimes these solutions might be half-baked. And the problem is, these half-baked solutions can be more disruptive than helpful. So this is clearly a challenge in management by walking around. However, in Gemba Walks, the leaders do not throw solutions. Their only job is to do observations for reflection and analysis. A leader who's doing a Gemba Walk is ideally discouraged, is actually not supposed to speak out any solutions during the Gemba Walk. And it is important for the leader to come back to his office and then do some reflection and do some analysis as well, as to what he observed, what he hoped to see, and what he really saw in happening at the workplace, at the Gemba. And he would also be required to complete the whole puzzle, to connect all the dots, and then see a bigger picture, and then come up with a solution that will really help in the PDCA cycle. The PDCA cycle, as most of you might be aware of, it's a plan, do, check, and adjust cycle. So the PDCA cycle is what we also try and do in our in our Agile practices. So JP, before moving further, I just wanted to break for any questions.
Yeah, so far there's a couple of questions. Let me bring one which is appropriate at this point. So because you're talking about a planned activity in the Gemba Walk, Vasant, one of our participants, has a question on how does one ensure that Gemba Walk doesn't result in micromanagement?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So the leader has to be aware that the Gemba Walk should not result in micromanagement, firstly, and the leader would only be looking at the context of the whole organization. The leader is not supposed to make any suggestions or throw any random solutions during the Gemba Walk, which is in fact the case in the management of walking around. That's why I wanted to bring this clear distinction. In Gemba Walk, the leader is supposed to ask questions, look for the answers, and show respect. The leader is not supposed to throw any answers at the person who's giving him the answers, or the person who's involved at the Gemba. So I hope I have answered your question. We will get to it a little more, because when we try and combine Gemba with Scrum, that's when the things get a little more clear as to how does Gemba prevent micromanagement. Certainly, micromanagement is not advised, especially when you're doing Gemba walking. It defeats all the purpose.
Yeah, so I think we can definitely touch this question again when you get into Scrum aspects, Scrum and Gemba.
Sure,
There's
sure.
one more person who's raising. I think Soumya is raising her hand. So I'm going to unmute her so that she can ask a question. Hello, Soumya?
Priyank, yes,
Yeah,
can you hear me?
yes,
Priyank,
so I can hear you.
yes. While a leader does a Gemba walk, I just wanted to know whether he will speak to one individual, maybe a technical lead or something like that, or is he concerned about the whole team?
The leader should be talking to every member in the team. May not be in the same day when he does the Gemba walk, but the leader should schedule different Gemba walks to go and meet different people. So that is when the leader gets the complete picture.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Thank you.
All right. It need not be just the team lead alone. It should be the team lead. It should be the uh, engineers, and it should be even if it is build engineers, if you have in your team, everybody, the
All
product
right.
owners, everybody.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, all right. So JP, are we good to move forward?
Yeah, just one more question before you move forward. Bhanu Prasad wants to know when you say it's planned, the Gemba walk is planned, does it mean
Mhm.
that leaders should inform the team when they visit and then what topic he or she wants to discuss with the team?
It'll be good if they even talk about mention the topic that they want to discuss about, but most of the times it will be the leader might not be really aware of what topic to choose. Then he can let the other persons or the team members know that he's doing a visit at this time and day, and he would probably just speak through or just be a learning opportunity. He'll make use of it as a learning opportunity for him to just understand what is it that they are going through.
Right.
So
I
when
would
it
like
comes to
to add with that one more perspective, Priyank. So during my experience of coaching and getting some leaders out of the cabin and then encouraging them to do Gemba walks, whenever they plan Gemba walks for collaboration purpose, usually they inform beforehand so that relevant people are there and they know that a leader is visiting them to collaborate. Whereas if a leader wants to just get himself or herself into what's happening and maybe make some observations for his or her own learning, or maybe for further analysis, then usually they make an impromptu, I mean, a planned visit, but without informing the relevant people. So it depends on the purpose or the intent, is what I wanted to say.
Right. JP, just to add to that, there will be cases where teams are really skeptical about the leader, and there will be cases where the team really enjoys, certain leader's presence. So it entirely depends on the context also. Some of the
Sure.
teams might just get into a shell if a leader is visiting them. So in those places, it will be really hard to pull off a Gemba walk immediately, but you can introduce it as a practice, and over a period the team will also start appreciating that Gemba walk is really helping them, and that's when they start with getting more and more open about the issues that they're facing. Uh, so JP, with that we can move forward, I believe.
Yes, please. Yeah.
All right, all right. So why Gemba walk? So this is a very good code. I thought I should share with you all. This is from a former president of the United States. He says farming looks mighty easy when your plow is a pencil and you're 1,000 miles away from a cornfield. So this really summarizes why one has to do Gemba walk. Otherwise, you will keep wondering, why things are not happening the way they should be. But in reality, there'll be a lot of challenges that the teams will be facing. So certainly, I think most of you will agree with me that the processes look different on paper and are very different in execution. Given that we are all humans, and then we have our own baggage of constraints, our own baggage of how we think, look up a problem, or how we approach a problem. So most of the processes will be different on paper, and definitely if a leader is relying only on paper, then he will have a false impression of the execution that is really happening. And another important aspect that we want to understand here is people are very, very open to providing feedback when they're in their space, in their own space. Rather than if you ask the people to come to a meeting room, to your own office, for that matter, to a leader's office, people might just get into a shell. They might not open up. So the key point here is the leader wants to know what is it that the team is going through, what are the real challenges that the team is facing, and to get that information, it is good if it is the other way. It is just the leader who is going and walking all the way till the team members. And people also open up about the behavior, the reason for the behavior when they are in their own space, in a space which they are really comfortable in. So there will be certain behaviors that have come up, maybe not following a process, or maybe not uh, updating certain things after doing code check-ins, etc. So there will be certain reasons for the behavior, and if some leader just drops in, or if some leader just calls the team members and then asks them like, why are we not following these processes, then there is a high chance that the leader might miss out on the real reasons. People just make up their own reason, and then the leader will be left with less information to pursue on. And there are high chances that the people might be used to certain problems in the processes. A fresh set of eyes are required to spot the problem. What I mean is there could be a longer build time in your organization. In some of the organizations that I have worked before, the build used to take 2 hours. So normally an engineer who's done with some code changes would fire a build and then go grab a cup of coffee or play TT or foosball and come back to see his build as broken. And then he fixes it again, he launches the build and again goes back, plays TT, have a chat or reads newspapers and comes back. Something like that. So these kind of things, they are things that the people got used to. These are problems that people got used to. And these kind of problems, people never even complain. They might think that, okay, this is part of the process. Now, a fresh set of eyes might spot this as a problem. Oh my God, 2 hours is a big, long duration for a build to happen. So we should do something about it. Then the leader might take corrective actions in a different direction, and the build time might get reduced. And there could be a dependency on another team. So most of the places that I have worked with, we did have dependencies on different teams, and unfortunately most of those teams were working in a different time zone. So whenever we really needed any help, the help was not available because their working times were different, or when it is Monday here, there is a Sunday still, and we were wondering, thinking whether to call them up or not, etc., etc. So these are the kind of problems we kept among ourselves as a team. We never brought it up even to the manager. So these are the points where a leader can really observe and then identify, oh, there's a dependency on this team. What is it that we could do in our capacity as a leader, in my capacity as a leader, to address this so that the whole team gets unblocked? Now that we have spoken about Gemba Walk, and I think pretty much you're all very much appreciative of the concept Gemba Walk. Now let us see how Gemba Walk is important and why it is important in Agile transformation initiatives. Firstly, let us look at how a normal Agile transformation initiative might start. An executive from the organization has hit upon a conference or has met across several other organizations executives who have done Agile transformation and have reaped a lot of benefits. Maybe they have read about good things that Agile has to offer, Agile ways of working has to offer. So that's when you get an executive sponsor. Most of the decisions, the executives say, okay, I will sponsor this initiative. Let us do this transformation, maybe by team or projects by projects, etc. But let's get going in this direction. So somehow an executive sponsor finds a particular team and then he gets started with that. I know that there are organizations who have taken a decision that we will do transformation across the board, entire teams, all the teams together. So there are certain cases as well. However, in most of the cases, because people really don't want to disrupt the current ongoing work or operations, they would prefer piloting with certain teams. And that's when a team or two are identified for agile transformation. And an agile coach is hired, or an internal champion is brought in. Internal champion could be the one who has always been speaking good about agile, who has done certain certifications, or who has worked in agile and work environments earlier and has good opinions about it. So that those could be internal champions. And most of the internal champions could be scrum masters as well. And we might as well have those scrum masters attending our webinar today. However, in all this process, someone in the middle management is not convinced and is a little nervous. You will be lucky if that someone is just one, and if you're unfortunate, then there are quite a good number of people who are not convinced about agile practices, and they are a little nervous also for whatever reason. Now, the real danger is these are the people who can message, or who can uh, put up a story about the transformation initiative to the executive sponsor himself, or to the senior management person who is trying to oversee this agile transformation. Now, the real danger is if the uh, if the person who's an executive sponsor, we know that executives are really busy, they have a lot of things to worry about every day, their days are completely booked for foreseeable future. Now, if the executive sponsors are not taking Gemba walks, your agile transformation initiative might be in danger, because you never know the kind of conversation that the other people who are not so convinced about agile transformation initiative, the kind of conversation that those people are having with the executive himself. Now, this is where you as agile coaches or scrum masters, it is you who can introduce the concept of Gemba walk to the executive sponsor. Go talk to him, tell him that introduce him the concept of him or her, the concept of Gemba walk and why it is important. And they will certainly have a lot of questions about how to do Gemba walk. Because in a manufacturing unit, let's take Toyota for example, if there is a car assembly that is going on and a tire being fixed, you know that there's a particular person who does the fitting of the tire, and there is a particular location where it gets fixed. And if you say, or if you tell the executive that, okay, we will go and do a Gemba walk to the location where tire gets fixed, the executive has a clear-cut idea as to where and what he should go and do. However, in software, that's not the case, right? Because you really do not have such practical physical things. Now, this is where the challenge comes, and we do have an answer, and Scrum provides us those answers. So one thing about Gemba walk is, without an established standard practice, it is not worthwhile doing, because you never know what you're observing, whether it is in line with the standards, whether it's in line with the the way things should be done, or if there are deviations, are there really deviations, etc. You will never really not be able to understand unless there are established standard practices. And also, you need to have some information radiator, especially in software. When I took the example of the tire, car assembly, where tire gets assembled, or a door gets fixed, you really see that the door is getting fixed, and the time that is being taken to fix the door, and where the door is coming from, and etc. In software, you don't have any such thing, right? So that's why you have to make use of the information radiators. To the executive sponsors, you introduce them the concept of how to read a burn down chart. A burn down chart which is put up in the scrum room, executive might not be really aware of how to read it, because he has so many other things to keep track of, he or she, so that really might not be really aware of how to read the burn down chart. And it is a very easy thing to pick up in a second or two. So you have to really introduce them to how to read information radiators such as the burn down chart, and also how to look for patterns in the burn down chart. If the burn down chart is clearly in line with clearly falling in line with the ideal path, then there's a problem. If it is not at all closer to the ideal path, then also there's a problem. So then where to look for to identify the problem, that also has to be introduced to the executive. Also, you have to introduce the Scrum board to the executive. Maybe this is something that you have to do a couple of times for the executive to really get a hang of how to read the Scrum board. Maybe you can talk about different colored post-its for every work item that is being put up, that is being worked upon in the particular sprint, and make sure that these information radiators have all the information readily available. Something like which sprint is currently running, when is the sprint ending, and what are the work items that were taken up for this sprint, what are the real blockers, and what were the unexpected work that came the team's way during the sprint, which the team really had to respond to. Because we know that in real world there will be situations when a particular issue comes up, and then team sometimes have to respond to that. I'm not saying it should be a practice all the while, but there will be situations. We do understand that there will be some certain situations, and if those are really recorded, then the executive would know that okay, there are so many interruptions are coming the team's way. Maybe that's where something that I can work on, or so many blockers are coming in the team's way, in the team's way to achieve the intended goals, sprint goals, right? So the executive might take one or two action item from the blockers, and then he would probably connect the dots and then go work on it. Maybe there is a dependency on another team. Maybe the build times are longer. Maybe the tools are not available. Maybe the devices, especially in the embedded software development area, maybe the devices are not available, or maybe the lab is not set up, etc. and etc. Also, we could invite the executive sponsor to take part in the sprint review. He or she need not be part of the sprint review, 2-hour duration. However, they can come in for a brief period. We can have a look of the product that is being built, that is being, showcased at the sprint review, and they can really sit through the whole ceremony and then get a feel of what really goes on in the sprint review. Maybe the product owner is not really able to communicate the requirements, because that's when the sprint review would involve a lot of to and fro conversation, that this is what we expected and this is what we are delivering, this is what we thought you would need, this is what we thought as a priority, etc., etc., gets exchanged. These are real things that I'm talking about, how sprint reviews happen, right? So an executive sitting through these conversations would get a lot more understanding. So it is important that you try and invite, you insist. The executives might be really busy, they might have 100% things, but you insist, because this is really important for the Agile Transformation Initiative to be a success. Otherwise, you never know what are the stories that are being communicated to the executive sponsor and what are the stories that he is making up on his own, right? JP, I would want to pause here for any questions, if there are.
So there were a few questions, but I think you answered them, so you can proceed. And just a quick time reminder, we have about 6 minutes from the scheduled time.
All right, JP. Thank you. All right. Also, another Gemba Walk opportunity for the executive sponsor is the sprint planning. So this is where most of the things about how things are going on the ground become really, really clear. So most of the coaches, Agile coaches here, would agree with me when I say that when you go to the sprint boundary, you can almost read about the entire sprint, how the entire sprint went, without without being really wrong about it. So the seasoned Agile coaches would really understand the importance of being present in the sprint planning to really see and identify what is it that the team is going through, what are the challenges, or what are the symptoms that the problems what are the symptoms that are surfacing in the sprint planning. So here, if the product owner is really not prepared, it will show up in the sprint planning. Here, if the team is really not able to understand the gravity of a particular feature, and they're trying really hard to estimate it, and they're not able to come to a conclusion on the estimation, then it signals something to the executive sponsor. Also, if the team are having a wide good discussions, and they're figuring out all the possibilities, all the acceptance criteria, scenarios, all the remote scenarios, if they're able to identify and they debate about it, and there's a good discussion happening, that's a signal to the executive sponsor. So in couple of engagements that I was part of, uh, before Agile transformation, the development team and the testing team never really worked together during planning. They started working together only when the feature was complete. And that's when all the wrong assumptions about the feature came into play, and everybody had confusions about it. So it used to take 1 or 2 weeks just for the confusions to settle down, and then things would start moving forward again. 1 or 2 weeks, really. So now, when the Scrum was introduced to the team, and before the feature got developed, the developers and the testers sat together and they started sprint planning, and then they itself they discussed and ironed out their assumptions about the feature. So a lot of things became clear, and that was something that was really appreciated by the executive sponsor himself, because he noticed it, and then he really found value in it, because a lot of assumptions were cleared out in the first day, so that the testing team could proceed on their own with the development of scripts, test scripts, automating the test scripts, and considering different options for testing and etc. Similarly, developers had a good idea about what is it that they expected out of this feature, and the whole development was almost in place. So these are some things that gives you opportunity to do Gemba Walk. Now, this is the most important piece of the webinar, the things to avoid during Gemba Walk. And you really want to pay attention to this. So if the leader is judging the people instead of the process, then it's a problem, because this is where people would go into a shell and then they'll never open up again. The whole idea would Gemba Walk would stand still. And also, if we are inviting executive sponsors to the sprint ceremonies, scrum ceremonies, and if the leader himself starts judging people, then even the scrum ceremonies would lose out, because we really want people to be really open about what is the product that they have built, what is a planet product that they're planning to build, and we really want them to have transparent conversations. We do not want the team to hide anything. So if the leader gets into judging people, then it's a wrong signal to send out. The very notion that the leader might be judging people would shut all doors. The second one is giving unwarranted advice. In the Gemba Walk, it is recommended that no advice be made, because the information that the leader gets, he would have to go back, he or she would have to go back and use it as a data point to analyze from a broader perspective, and then come back with real action items that would make a difference. So the urge to giving an unwarranted advice is too much, and as somebody pointed out earlier, giving an unwarranted advice during the Gemba Walk would look like you are micromanaging, and that's a very wrong signal to send out. Making it punitive. I'm using a very strong word here, punitive, but if a leader is seen to be taking decisions during the Gemba Walk, very drastic decisions, then also the whole point of Gemba Walk would be defeated, and the future Gemba Walks would not be so productive, or would not be so effective. The reason I'm saying is, let's say if you're sitting in a sprint planning meeting, and the product owner comes unprepared. Now, if the leader starts questioning as to why you are not prepared, what stopped you from being very much prepared for this sprint planning, and then the product owner were to define his own challenges that he had with so and so team, then the leader might get into calling up the other team and then discussing with them. It just goes on and on and on. So then it would appear to other team members who are sitting there, that Gemba Walks are meant to be, firing action. So that's a very wrong signal. It doesn't give them the comfort. The other one is confusing Gemba Walk to management by walking around. MBWA has its advantages, but there's a good tendency to get confused about Gemba Walk. I had this experience, in one of the organizations that I was engaged with as an agile coach. When I started introducing the Gemba Walk to the executive immediately replied saying, "No, no, we have been doing that always." I had noticed the executive has already been doing it, but he was only doing management walking around. He used to move around, cracking jokes, talking to people, drawing them into conversation, and then probably making some suggestions here and there and coming back. It used to work for him in some or the other way, but it is not Gemba Walk. So there's a good tendency for people to get confused about Gemba Walk to be management by walking around. So this is something that needs to be really avoided. So with that, we have come to the end of the webinar. And JP, I would like to pause here for any questions. I hope we are almost on time.
Right, yeah, we're just on time. We just crossed 8:45 right now. So there's one question which is still not answered. I think there were a few other you answered. So the question is, making a sponsor to have a look at information radiators, making him or her visit sprint review, planning, etc. Definitely help in cutting layers and helps in having first-hand info. But usually executive sponsors are generally pressed for time. So how is this handled in Gemba?
Yeah. So this is your challenge. As you rightly pointed out, it will definitely cut the layers and then give the information directly to the executive sponsor. Executive sponsors will be able to see all the value in it with the information radiators. Now, how are you going to ask them for their time is really, really a challenging task. I do agree. In fact, I myself had this trouble of getting the time of the executive sponsor. Sometimes what I used to do is I go and talk to the executive sponsor during the time of lunch, maybe at 1 o'clock. Just go and bump him to him during his lunch and then tell him, like, after you're done, I need your 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe we can go for a walk. Let's do a Gemba walk. So the word Gemba walk would probably catch their attention. What you could say is, let me tell you what Gemba walk is also during our walk. So as you walk from the cafeteria to his office, you introduce the concept of Gemba walk, and then also I request him to come and take a look at the Scrum board or at the burn-down chat. It is important for you to have them physically visible in a single place. It's highly recommended that you have it in a room where the Scrum board is there, the burn-down chart is there, the obstacles board is there, the capacity planning sheet is also there, the definition of done, if possible, write it down and paste it also in the same room. So have everything there. When you get them to the room, the executives are really, really smart. They would not need so much of time. Once they're in, they'll pick up minute or two on as to how to read the entire Scrum board. And once you've done it, once you've had that breakthrough, then the executives themselves will start seeing value in it. They'll make it a point to come visit it once or twice a week. And also invite them for the sprint planning. Tell them, like, maybe you can use things to say that this important feature is being planned in this sprint. Some important feature, you can name it, go tell them. Sometimes the leaders will be really interested in knowing about the feature, because it will really help them in some other conversations with the salespeople or with the marketing team. So it's actually valuable to them also, because some of the feature information they would be really struggling to figure out, trying to read some document late night, sitting late night trying to read document and understand, and not getting much out of it. But then sitting through the sprint planning or the sprint review for 15 minutes or 20 minutes would give them enough information for them to pursue on. So it's really valuable to the executive sponsors as well. It just depends on how you articulate it, and it is a challenge individual to individual.
Right. So Priyank, I think if I were to summarize some of the pointers you gave, it's so based on the context and also how we articulate about the value of Gemba walk, maybe how do we introduce this concept, and also every walk could have just one focused intent, a small intent which not take too much of a time from an executive. Does this sound like a good summary?
Yeah, JP. And it is really valuable to the executives. Once you bring them to the Gemba Walk, they'll see value and then they'll start appreciating it, like anything.
Sure. So you'll have to overcome the initial hurdle, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Got it. So I think thanks, Priyank, for that. I think we don't have any more questions lying in the question box, and also no one has raised the hand. And we're also 5 minutes past the scheduled time. So unless anyone has any other question to ask, we can call it an end. Okay, so I don't see any hands going up, no questions in the question box. So let's declare the end of the webinar, and thank you all the participants for your
And if you
participation
have any
today.
questions, do reach out to us, send us an email, or probably connect to us on LinkedIn and send us a message. We'll be happy to respond.
Yep, cool. Okay, thanks,
All
guys.
right. Thank
Have
you,
a good
JP.
night. Yeah, thanks, Priyank. Bye-bye.
Bye.